Hey friends, I had an interesting thought today. It was kind of a way that I hadn't thought about uh, music before. And if you've heard my posts, if you're tuning into my posts for the first time, I'm a musician, I'm a pianist. And a lot of what I talk about on this post is the nature of music and the role it plays in my life, and the role that I ultimately think that it plays, or at least the way in which the practice of music can contribute to insight and ultimately a kind of spiritual practice, transformational practices. Music can play a role in that, and in fact, the way I teach music to the students who tend to resonate with me is actually the work is primarily about that deeper work. It's about mindfulness work, and the musical learning comes next. The musical learning is an outgrowth of deep mindfulness work, but deep mindfulness work is inherently transformational. So if we're putting our focus on that practice that is almost inevitably going to result in transformation, we're also going to improve musically, and we're going to improve musically in ways that are organic to our deeper transformation. So anyway, I usually don't introduce my posts by imagining that a brand new viewer is tuning in, but you never know. If you are, welcome. So today I watched a video. I've talked about this in several of my posts over the last couple of weeks. There's a video series by John Vervaeke called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It's on YouTube. And it's super cool. I'm only on episode 9 out of over 50. I don't even know how many there are, but there are a lot. And he spoke today. He started breaking down how attention works and how perception works, and how we're always zooming in and zooming out through the various mediums, the various artifacts, the various tools that we use, and the various psychological tools that we use. He makes a great connection in one of the early videos between technology, in the concrete technology in the world, and psychotechnology, which is essentially psychological practices, habits, learned skills that become a form of engagement with the world, obviously, but also then become part of how we make meaning. And he goes into, in the video that I was still kind of in the middle of, he talks about how we're perceiving through, in the same way that if I take a pen and I tap on this phone case, and I'm sort of like discovering the contours of the phone case via the sensations that are coming to me through this pen. And then I can even back up my sensations one level beyond that and go, okay, well, not just what am I feeling through the pen into the object, but what am I feeling in my hand as I touch the pen? What is my hand feeling? What's happening? What is my wrist feeling? How far can I back up the sensations and then move them back, sort of like this zooming in and zooming out through the perceptive tools that we have available to us. And he then connects that little, very concrete, very simple experiment to the nature of our attention zooming in and out through the lenses that we have as available to us as psychotechnologies. One of the ones he points out is literacy. Literacy is something where we have to read all the letters to understand a word, but we also have to, in some ways, know what the words mean in order to make sense of the letters. There are all these experiments where an entire sentence is written with all the letters jumbled up, all the words have all their letters jumbled, and people can read these sentences with something like 96% accuracy. It's amazing. you look at a page of words, and all the words, the letters of each word are sort of spaced together. They're still grouped into words, but the letters within the word are just completely jumbled up. And yet we can read it almost at the same speed that we would read if the letters were arranged properly. So and that's because we go from the granular to I think he calls it the fundamental, or the object, to the gestalt, to the larger form. I'm not using his terminology very accurately, so please, if John Vervaeke is watching this, be kind. I'm totally summarizing and overgeneralizing. However, the point I'm trying to make is that this zooming in and zooming out behavior of our awareness, of our attention, is something that I think about all the time on the piano. And in fact, it's something that very explicitly became one of my units in the Mindful Piano Intensive, where I had people essentially not just notice what their mind is doing. Like, as we're practicing something, when you're practicing a piece of music, right? What's the farthest you could zoom out? Well, the entire piece of music, right? That would be the full gestalt, from start to finish, whole piece, however long it is. Usually we don't practice the entire piece all at once. Maybe we read it once, but then we go in and figure out what we need to work on. And it's, for me anyway, that's a process that takes a while. I break it down into little tiny chunks, and then I start putting little tiny chunks together into bigger chunks, and then those bigger chunks become even bigger chunks. And then little by little, I construct a full understanding of the piece and the ability to play the piece. And then as I get a bigger and bigger, as the minutiae start to come together and coalesce into understood phrases, I then my awareness starts to go, well, what's the arc here? What's the larger movement happening, right? I start to think about the meaning of a phrase, not just the kind of intricate nature of the phrase, but the meaning of the phrase, the overall impact picture of the phrase. Blah, blah, blah. Some of this may seem very obvious, but as a practice, when you're working on a piece of music on piano or any other instrument, this zooming in and zooming out is constantly happening. And something that I had never really thought about until it somehow hit me today is the fact that I'm somebody who spends a lot of time in the big picture of life. This whole post is in some ways all about what's the biggest picture I can see on any given day, and what can I express when I'm regarding my life, and when I'm regarding life in general, from that kind of highest vantage point, that vantage point from which I can see the most. And that varies day to day. Some days are way higher altitude than others, but by consciously revisiting that perspective and then trying to articulate something from that place, little by little, that becomes more and more my normal. And I spend a lot of time doing that. It's something that fascinates me. Listening to John Vervaeke's series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, I swear I could do it 12 hours a day. I just don't have that many hours to devote to listening to YouTube, but I would if I could. It just fascinates me. And what I noticed about myself, or the insight that I had about myself today, is that piano, music, inherently involves getting granular. It forces me to go into tiny, 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 minute details and use my attention that way. And I wonder, I can't say that I for sure know this is the case, but I wonder whether that's why piano, music, and piano in particular, fascinate me so much. I wonder if that's what I get from the practice of music, Because as an exercise, if our mind is inclined to do this kind of, I call it expansion and contraction, expanding our consciousness and contracting. And I look very closely at that, and I sort of have students observe that very closely when they're practicing. Where is your mind? What level of how closely zoomed in, how far zoomed out, how tightly bound is your sort of stream of attention? Are you trying to go really deep into a tiny little minute detail of maybe a physical gesture or a tiny little nook of a phrase? Or are you sitting back a little more and feeling the whole? I try to be aware of that, and I try to encourage my students to be aware of that, and really not just do that as a matter of course because you kind of have to do that anyway when you're playing music, but actually be aware of that and make those choices quite deliberately. Be conscious of what we're doing, because that's the mindfulness aspect of the work. If we're doing that aspect of the work, then we are inherently in a mindfulness practice, and the music's going to go better. We're going to do a better job because we're going to be conscious of how we're using our attention instead of things that just happen to catch our attention, or sort of without real clarity about why we're doing something with our attention, just kind of doing what feels like maybe the right thing, but it's not really a conscious decision. It's just kind of being provoked by our compulsion, or by something that that triggers it. So I bring that into my own practice quite a lot, and I really encourage students to kind of do that too. But I'd never thought about the fact that gives me such joy and such, it's almost like it gives my mind this relief, this like, yes, or like, not, it's like like when you go to the gym, you feel great afterwards. It's like that for my mind. My mind gets to go in there and get super granular and then expand. It's like a workout. It's a workout for my psyche and not to mention my body. And I just never quite thought of it that way before. I mean, it's, I obviously am well aware of all the benefits of piano and the ways in which, the reasons why I love it, I feel like it does for me, but I'd never quite thought of it as particularly pertaining to the mind's desire for like a full cross-training workout, that's why it provides such a great lift, a great feeling, and why it makes me just, it truly feels like if I sit down at the piano and do work like that, I feel like I've cleaned out my system. I feel like I've gone on a cleanse for an hour or something. Psychic cleanse. So kind of fun to hit on that and sort of make that connection for myself, because it was really powerful and palpable, and really kind of an interesting twist on things I've done a lot of thinking about before, but never quite put together in that way. So that's what I got today, folks. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great day. I will see you soon.